So if we look at the statistics, and this is honestly a bit rough to hear, but statistically speaking, about 95 to 98% of the people listening to this right now will fail to reach their ultimate true potential by the time they hit age 65.
Right. It's a massive number.
It really is. I mean, they won't hit that financial independence they dream of, or, the creative freedom, or just that quiet sense of internal peace.
Yeah.
And the truly terrifying part about this failure rate,
Yeah.
it has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of effort.
And I mean, that is the most jarring aspect of the data we're looking at today. We are so culturally conditioned to view human achievement as this simple linear equation of physics.
Like a seesaw.
Right, totally. Like input equals output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You put a certain amount of weight on one side, so, sweat, time, pure grit, sacrifice weekends, and the other side is just supposed to lift.
Right. You put in the hours, you get the promotion, you save the pennies, you build the wealth, you do all the right things, and boom, you find happiness. We basically expect the universe to perfectly balance the ledger.
Which, is a completely logical expectation.
Yeah.
It's comforting to think we live in this giant spreadsheet where input directly equals output.
Oh, absolutely. It makes us feel safe.
Right. But let's paint a picture of a really universal human experience. Yeah. One that, honestly, almost everyone listening has felt in their bones at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You are working yourself to absolute exhaustion. You're waking up at 5 in the morning, chugging lukewarm coffee, checking all those traditional boxes society handed to you.
The whole checklist.
The whole thing. You sacrifice your free time, your hobbies, family moments, literally pushing through clinical levels of fatigue just to achieve your goals. And yet, you feel like you are endlessly pushing a massive boulder up a steep, muddy hill.
Yeah, and every time you take a step, the ground it slips right out from under your boots.
Exactly. It's this eternal hustle that somehow never actually arrives at the promised destination.
It really is the defining condition of modern life. I mean, people are running on a treadmill that just keeps accelerating, but the scenery never, ever changes.
And here's the maddening contradiction that makes people just want to tear their hair out.
Yeah.
While you are struggling, sweating, trying to be the ultimate good person, you look over and see someone else.
Right. Someone who maybe isn't trying nearly as hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perhaps someone you consider, frankly, far less talented than you. Someone clearly less hardworking. Maybe even someone who is a bit, ruthless and entirely self-serving.
Oh, no, we all know that person.
We do. And they're just gliding up this invisible escalator to success. They seem to bend reality to their will with just terrifying ease.
They launch the business, get the funding, secure the relationship, and they just look so relaxed doing it.
Right. So why does raw effort and being a good person so often result in nothing but clinical burnout while others just breeze past the finish line? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to do that, it requires us to completely dismantle our assumptions about how reality actually operates.
Okay, I'm ready. Where do we start?
So the research suggests that the 98% who are failing are not failing because they are lazy. Not at all. They are making a massive ontological error.
An ontological error?
Yeah, an error in how they fundamentally understand the nature of existence. They're trying to manipulate physical outcomes, which is basically like frantically trying to rearrange the furniture in a room before they have even built the physical room itself.
Oh, wow. Rearranging the furniture before the room is built. That's a haunting image.
It is, but it perfectly describes the sensation of forced hustle. They're treating a metaphysical, psychological game as if it were a purely physical battle of brute force.
Okay, so our mission today is to synthesize this incredible stack of research to uncover the hidden architecture of human performance.
Right.
We're pulling from cognitive neurobiology, behavioral psychology, historical metaphysics, sociology, all of it. Our goal is to reveal why the traditional sequence of success is fundamentally backwards.
And how shifting your internal framework is literally the only way to stop fighting the current and start directing it.
So let's look at the foundation. Where do we even begin to construct this room? Because, everything I've ever been taught says that if I am a good, honest, hardworking person, the universe will eventually reward me.
Well, we have to start with what is probably the most uncomfortable yet ultimately liberating concept in this entire exploration.
Brace me.
The neutrality of the laws.
Okay. Neutrality.
Yes. The universe operates with a profound, absolute indifference to human moral constructs. Complete indifference. When you look at physical forces like gravity, thermodynamics, or electricity, they are entirely amoral. Electricity does not possess a moral compass, right, or a sense of justice.
No, of course not.
It will power a life-saving incubator in a neonatal hospital ward, and it will just as readily shock an innocent person who accidentally touches a live wire.
Wow. Yeah, just does what it does.
Exactly. The law of electricity simply functions according to its inherent nature. The research on human performance posits that the underlying laws of reality, the mechanics of success, achievement, psychological manifestation, they operate with that exact same terrifying neutrality.
Okay, as humans, our immediate instinct is to just absolutely reject that idea.
Oh, 100%.
We want the universe to be a courtroom.
Uh-huh.
We want a cosmic judge who ensures the righteous win and the wicked are punished. The alternative feels like pure chaos.
It's a very scary thought for the human brain.
And when I was looking through the psychological research in our stack, I found the exact term for this desperate need. It's called the just world hypothesis.
Yes, the just world hypothesis is one of the most powerful cognitive biases in the human mind.
It functions as this internal defense mechanism. We subconsciously draft this moral contract with the reality really early in childhood. Like, if we are good, good things must happen to us. If we're bad, bad things happen. But if the universe is neutral, like you just described, then random tragedy can strike anyone, anytime, regardless of their virtue.
And to avoid that existential dread, our brains just violently cling to the just world bias. We construct this narrative of fairness.
And the lengths the human mind will go to protect that narrative are astounding.
Truly. When this bias is violated, like when we see terrible things happen to wonderful people or we see terrible people succeeding wildly, we experience intense cognitive dissonance.
It literally hurts the brain to hold two conflicting realities.
It does. And to resolve that psychological pain and feel safe again, people routinely resort to victim blaming.
Oh, I've seen that.
There's this famous psychological study from the 1960s that perfectly illustrates this. Subjects were told about a student who won a purely random lottery.
Okay.
The subjects overwhelmingly started to attribute positive traits to the winner. They convinced themselves the winner must have worked harder, studied longer, or just been a generally better person than the losers.
Wait, really? Even though they were explicitly told it was random?
Exactly. The mind is so incredibly eager to attribute moral merit to success, even when the success is mathematically random, just to maintain the illusion of a fair world.
I want to push back on this a little, or at least clarify the implications.
Sure.
Are we concluding that being a good person actually puts you at a disadvantage in this neutral universe? Because that feels like a really bleak takeaway for anyone listening.
No, it's not the goodness itself that is the disadvantage. I mean, empathy, kindness, integrity, those are vital for a functioning society and for your own deep personal fulfillment.
Right.
The handicap isn't the morality. The handicap is the psychological baggage that our society inextricably links to being a good person.
What kind of baggage are we talking about? Like guilt.
Exactly. Let's examine what behavioral analysts call the amoral advantage. When you look at the psychological profiling of highly successful, highly competitive individuals who just seem to effortlessly acquire resources.
The people gliding up the escalator.
Right. You often find traits associated with the dark triad.
Which is narcissism, right?
Subclinical narcissism, Machiavellianism, strategic manipulation. These individuals often thrive spectacularly in the physical world. And why? It's not because the universe rewards evil.
Right, because the universe is neutral.
Exactly. It's because they operate with zero internal guilt. They do not suffer from imposter syndrome or performance anxiety. They feel utterly and completely entitled to their desires.
Wow.
Because they lack a crippling moral filter, their internal psychological signal is entirely clear. They are perfectly aligned with their goals without any self-doubt, dampening their frequency or causing hesitation.
So they don't have that little voice in their head saying, who do you think you are to want $1 million? There are people starring. You shouldn't ask for that promotion. You haven't suffered enough yet.
They are completely free of that internal monologue. Now, contrast that with what we can call the good person trap.
Okay, what's that?
Highly moral, highly empathetic people often carry massive amounts of unconscious guilt or survivor's guilt. They've internalized a societal narrative that says, in order to be truly worthy of love, wealth, or success, they must suffer.
They must bleed for it.
They literally attach their virtue directly to their struggle.
The martyr complex. I know so many brilliant people who operate this way.
Yeah.
If they make money easily, they feel sick with guilt. If a project goes smoothly, they assume they did something wrong or cheated somehow.
Because they subconsciously believe struggle equals righteousness. So when success starts to manifest easily, it violates their internal moral code.
And what happens then?
It leads to relentless subconscious self-sabotage. They will intentionally miss deadlines, pick fights in healthy relationships, or blow financial windfalls just to return to a state of struggle, because being in the struggle feels morally safe to them.
It's like playing a massively complex open-world video game. You're losing miserably because you're running around the map trying to win points for morality, fairness, and politeness.
Yeah.
But the game's programming engine doesn't even have a line of code for morality. It only recognizes momentum, physics, and positional alignment.
Exactly.
You keep pressing the be a good person button, expecting a reward drop, but the game engine is only tracking your coordinates and velocity.
The game engine only responds to alignment. It does not judge the player. It just executes the physics of the environment.
So, if the universe doesn't care about our moral standing, what exactly is it responding to? I feel like we need to bridge the gap from the philosophical rules of reality to the actual, tangible biological hardware inside our own skulls.
That's the perfect transition.
Well, let's talk about the gatekeepers. When I was reviewing the neurobiology notes, the reticular activating system, or the RAS, stood out as the physical location of this game engine.
Yes, the RAS is where the hard science completely validates the metaphysical philosophy. It's this complex, finger-sized network of neurons located right in the brainstem.
Okay.
And its primary function is to act as the ultimate executive gatekeeper to your conscious mind.
It's the bouncer at the VIP club of your consciousness.
A very strict bouncer. And this mechanism is absolutely necessary for human survival because our perception of reality is incredibly, shockingly narrow.
Narrow in what way?
Well, we think we see the world as it is, but we are looking through a microscopic keyhole. To give you an idea of how little of reality we actually interact with, the human eye is only capable of perceiving about 0.00035% of the known electromagnetic spectrum.
Let me stop you there because that number is staggering. 0.00035%.
It's almost nothing.
That means 99.9965% of physical reality is completely invisible to us. There are radio waves, ultraviolet light, infrared radiation, cosmic rays passing right through our bodies as we speak, and we are entirely blind to them.
We are virtually blind. Your brain and nervous system are bombarded with roughly 400 billion bits of sensory information every single second.
400 billion.
Every second. The temperature of the air, the hum of the refrigerator, the texture of your clothes, the movement of the shadows. If your brain attempted to consciously process even a fraction of that data, your nervous system would immediately collapse into a state of absolute psychosis.
You would just short circuit.
Completely.
Yeah.
So the RAS filters the noise. It blocks out the overwhelming majority of reality. But here is the critical operational mechanism.
Oh.
The RAS only lets in information that your subconscious mind has deemed important.
So it's a highly programmable filter. It's basically an algorithm running in the background of our biology.
Exactly. It utilizes specific neurotransmitter arousal systems to maintain this gate. It uses dopamine to track goal-oriented attention, norepinephrine to maintain vigilance and scan for threats, and serotonin to regulate mood and behavioral inhibition.
Okay, so how does this play out in real life?
Well, if you hold a deep subconscious belief that the world is inherently hostile or that financial success is mathematically impossible for someone from your specific background, your RAS is literally programmed by that belief.
Oh, wow.
It will meticulously scan the environment, zero in on every single piece of negative feedback, every rejection letter, every slight from a coworker, every pessimistic news headline, and allow only that data into your conscious awareness.
Creating a biologically enforced, perfect, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
You literally cannot see the opportunities around you because your biological hardware is filtering them out before they even reach your conscious mind. Someone could hand you a blueprint for $1 million business, and your RAS would highlight the one typo on page 4 to prove to you that it's a scam.
And we must understand that we are biologically predisposed to operate this way. It's a phenomenon known as the evolutionary negativity bias.
The survival instinct. Like, our ancestors didn't survive by being optimists.
Think about the evolutionary environment on the ancient savanna. The hominids who survived long enough to pass on their genes were not the ones who stopped to admire the 100 beautiful, fragrant flowers blooming in the grass.
Right, they get eaten.
The survivors were the ones whose nervous systems were hyper-attuned to notice the single venomous snake hidden among those flowers. Our nervous systems evolved over millions of years to prioritize threat detection above all else.
We are biologically wired to constantly build a mental shed of survival, defense, and anxiety, rather than a palace of expansion, joy, and creation.
We're always looking for the snake. Every time we walk into a boardroom, every time we open our bank app, we are scanning for the venomous snake.
But the breakthrough in modern neuroscience is the realization that we can intentionally hijack this ancient system, right?
Yes, the research on neuroplasticity, particularly involving the primary motor cortex, is staggering. We used to think the brain was static after a certain age. Now we know it is highly malleable.
I read this specific study on the athletes regarding this.
Oh, it's fascinating. Studies have been conducted on orthopedic surgeons practicing complex microscopic procedures and high-performance Olympic athletes rehearsing their routines.
Yeah, they took a group of people, put them on a couch, and had them intensely visualize lifting heavy weights.
Yeah.
They had to feel the strain in their muscles, imagine the sweat, hear the clanking of the iron, and without moving an inch off the couch, they literally strengthened the neural pathways to those specific muscle groups.
Yes.
They increased their physical strength through thought alone. The data reveals a mind-bending truth. The human brain cannot distinguish between an action that is vividly, intensely imagined with emotional resonance and an action that is physically performed in the three-dimensional world.
Through intense mental rehearsal, they physically rewired the cortical representation of the task in their brains. They changed their biological hardware through directed consciousness.
Okay, let's pause here because I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
What does this actually mean for you, the listener? Am I supposed to just trick my brain with positive thinking? Because if I'm being honest, that sounds dangerously close to toxic positivity. Like, you just sit around, plaster a smile on your face, and pretend everything is great while your house is actively burning down.
That is a crucial distinction to make. Toxic positivity is the suppression of reality. It's a defense mechanism rooted in denial where you refuse to process negative emotions.
Which is super unhealthy.
Very. What we are discussing is entirely different. We are talking about the deliberate direction of a biological mechanism. Let's look at the concept of psychocybernetics.
Okay.
This framework was pioneered by a reconstructive and plastic surgeon in the mid-20th century. He made a profound observation in his practice. He could perform flawless surgery to fix a patient's physical disfigurement, giving them a perfectly normal face.
Right.
But if their internal self-image remained ugly or broken, their external life did not improve one bit. They still acted timid, they still avoided social interaction, and they still believed they were disfigured.
Because the physical face changed, but the biological hardware, the RAS, and the self-image had not been updated.
Exactly. The surgeon realized that the human brain and nervous system operate as a highly sophisticated success mechanism. It functions mechanistically, exactly like a heat-seeking missile or an autonomous torpedo.
A torpedo.
Yes, a torpedo does not possess morals. It does not pause to consider if the target it is tracking is a positive, life-affirming thing or a negative, destructive thing. It simply, autonomously, and relentlessly steers toward the exact coordinates programmed into its guidance system.
And what are the coordinates?
In the human mind, your internal self-image is the coordinate. If your self-image is, I am a failure who always struggles with money, the brain accepts that coordinate without judgment.
Wow.
It will then automatically steer your behaviors, your microhabits, and your RAS filtering to hit that exact target, ensuring you remain a failure who struggles with money.
The brain is a heat-seeking missile, and it doesn't care what it destroys as long as it hits the coordinates you gave it.
Precisely.
That is terrifying. But it also explains why sheer willpower usually fails. You can try to hustle all day, but if your internal coordinate is set to struggle, your brain will course correct to make sure you struggle.
It will self-sabotage to stay on target.
So how do we program the right coordinates? Because clearly, working 80 hours a week and pushing the boulder isn't changing the guidance system.
No, it's not.
We have to look at how we structure our lives, which means completely flipping the chronological timeline of human achievement. Let's talk about the architecture of identity.
This is where it gets incredibly practical. Most of humanity operates within one of two fundamentally flawed models of achievement. The first and most common is the have-do-be paradigm.
The have-do-be model. Let me break down how I understood this from the sociological texts. This is essentially the ultimate waiting room mentality.
Yes, the waiting room.
The internal logic dictates when I finally have enough money, or when I have the perfect partner or have the prestigious degree, then I will finally be able to do the things that wealthy, happy, successful people do. And once I do those things, I will finally be secure, confident, and fulfilled.
It places the locus of control entirely outside the individual. It is a complete abdication of personal power to external circumstances.
I mean, I have lived in that waiting room. Once I get this promotion and have the title, I'll start exercising and do the healthy routines, and then I'll be happy.
We all have.
It leaves you entirely reactive. You are a victim to external resources that you do not currently possess or control.
And driven, ambitious people quickly realize the have-do-be model makes them powerless. So they pivot to the second flawed model, which society actively encourages, the do-have-be paradigm.
This is the absolute engine of the American dream. It's the meritocracy myth laid bare.
The underlying belief here is that endless action is the savior. Hustling, grinding, sacrificing sleep, and perpetually doing will eventually force the universe to allow you to have the resources you desire.
Which will miraculously transform you into being the person you want to be.
Exactly. And this is the primary driver of the modern burnout epidemic.
It's the hamster wheel. You are running and running until your lungs bleed, hoping the wheel eventually turns into a throne. But the fundamental flaw is that your identity is still tethered to external results.
It's still outside of you.
When I was reading the case studies on this, the most tragic example of a failure of the do-have-be model was the military reentry struggle.
The transition of veterans back into civilian life provides a very stark psychological case study. Many highly decorated, incredibly capable individuals face immense psychological hardship when they leave the service.
Because the structure is gone.
Because the military provides a flawless, perfectly structured do-have-be environment, do this extreme, demanding physical task, have this specific rank, medal, and uniform, and you will be a respected, powerful leader.
But the second they leave the base and take off the uniform,
The external checklist vanishes. The specific doing is gone. The physical having of the rank is gone. And because the being, the identity of leadership and worth, was entirely dependent on the external structure, their entire internal identity collapses. They are left in a psychological void.
which brings us to the core thesis of our conversation today. If have-do-be makes you a passive victim waiting for rescue, and do-have-be grinds you into clinical burnout, we have to look at the inverse.
The only one that works.
A model used by the 2% who actually master reality. Be do-have.
The ontological inversion, it defies common sense, but it aligns perfectly with neurobiology. You must embody the internal state, the frequency, the self-concept, the absolute identity of the desired result before any physical evidence of it exists in your environment.
Which sounds completely insane to the logical, rational mind. You are telling someone listening to be wealthy when their bank account is overdrawn and they are eating ramen noodles.
Right, but it is not about delusionally pretending you have physical cash to spend. You do not go buy a sports car you cannot afford.
Okay, good.
It is about embodying the psychological and emotional state of abundance. Let's look at the behavioral science behind this, specifically the architecture of identity-based habits. Behavioral researchers visualize human change as occurring in 3 concentric layers, much like an onion.
Like an onion, okay.
The outermost layer is outcomes what you get. The middle layer is processes what you do. The innermost core layer is identity what you believe about yourself.
Most people approach change from the outside in. They focus entirely on the outcome.
They declare, I want to write a novel, which is focusing on the outcome. So they force themselves to sit at a desk every morning focusing on the process.
But internally,
Internally, their core identity is still, I am a terrible procrastinator who lacks creative talent.
and what happens? The brain's heat-seeking missile activates. The RAS says, target acquired, untalented procrastinator, activating self-sabotage sequence to ensure coordinate alignment.
Yes. That mechanism is called psychological homeostasis. Your mind acts exactly like a central air conditioning thermostat.
I love this analogy.
If your internal identity thermostat is firmly set to 60 degrees of success, and through sheer agonizing willpower you hustle your way up to 80 degrees of success, the cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable to your nervous system.
Because it doesn't match the identity.
Your mind will trigger powerful defense mechanisms, sudden fatigue, crippling doubt, picking fights with your boss, making disastrous financial investments, all designed to pull your external reality back down to your 60-degree baseline.
The thermostat analogy makes so much sense. It reminds me of another concept we found in the research, the fly hitting the window effect.
Oh, that's a good one.
Have you ever watched a fly trapped in a room? It just keeps violently smashing its body against the glass pane of a closed window. It is hard-coded to fly toward the light, so it repeatedly throws itself against an invisible barrier.
I can't see the glass.
You cannot conceive of the idea of turning around, flying into the darker room, and finding the open door leading outside.
Yeah.
Humans do the exact same thing. We just keep smashing our faces against our own unupdated self-concepts, wondering why we have a headache but aren't making progress.
Which is precisely why the be-to-have model demands that you start at the core. You do not try to write a book. You make a definitive psychological decision. I am a person who writes daily. That is the B. You assume the identity.
Right.
Then every time you sit down and write a single paragraph, that action is not a chore, it is a vote. You are providing undeniable physical evidence to your own brain to prove this new identity is real. The do flows naturally and inevitably from the be, and the have, the finished published manuscript, is just an unavoidable physical byproduct of who you have become.
To truly understand the sheer, terrifying power of this identity-first approach, we need to move away from theory and look at a historical masterclass.
Yes, a real-world example.
A documented example of someone holding an internal mental frequency against overwhelming, hostile external odds. Let's talk about the late 1990s dot-com bubble.
It is perhaps the most perfect modern case study of this phenomenon. We are looking at the founder of a company that is today a ubiquitous global infrastructure titan.
Right, everyone uses them.
But if we rewind to the period between 1999 and 2001, it was an online retailer hemorrhaging cash at an alarming rate.
During the crash, the stock plummeted 90%. 90%. Try to imagine the psychological toll of that. You check your portfolio, you look at your life's work, and 90% of the market value has just vaporized into thin air.
The external physical reality was overwhelmingly brutal. Major Wall Street analysts were publicly mocking the founder. A highly respected leading financial magazine literally published a cover story with the title essentially calling the company a ticking bomb, predicting its total imminent failure.
Yeah, the media basically dismissed the founder as a clueless, naive middleman who fundamentally misunderstood basic economics.
Exactly. So the entire three-dimensional world, the stock market tickers, the prestigious journalists, the balance sheets, the investors, is screaming at this individual, you are a catastrophic failure, your company is dying, you are a joke.
For 99% of the population, the psychological thermostat would crash. They would absorb the environment, panic, and fold the company. But how did he react?
He held his internal frequency with absolute terrifying rigidity. While the external world was hyper-focused on the lack of immediate net profit and the crashing stock price, his internal self-concept was anchored to entirely different, deeply held metrics.
What was he looking at?
He was looking at his internal data. Customer accounts were exploding, and underlying sales had grown by 169% in a single year. Furthermore, he had already explicitly projected a 70% failure rate to his early investors years prior, so the current volatility didn't shock his nervous system.
Wow.
He maintained a long-term, unshakable vision that completely defied the current observable, disastrous reality.
He was meticulously laying the bricks for the room in his mind, while the entire world was standing around laughing at what looked like an empty plot of dirt.
In physics, we can understand this through the mathematical model of wave interference and entrainment.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Imagine two waves interacting. You have an internal frequency, which is your conviction, your belief, the electrical firing of your nervous system. And you have an external frequency, the environment, the societal doubt, the financial panic.
If I remember my high school physics, this released to constructive and destructive interference, right?
Correct. The mathematical model, when applied to neurosociology, suggests that if the amplitude, meaning the sheer intensity, focus, and coherence of your internal conviction, is significantly higher than the amplitude of the chaotic external environment, a physical phenomenon called entrainment occurs.
Entrainment?
Yes. Entrainment is when a stronger rhythmic system forces a weaker rhythmic system to synchronize with it. Your internal wave will literally overpower the external wave. People's mirror neurons will begin to align with your absolute certainty.
So investors will start to believe you, despite the numbers.
Yes. Your internal state forces the external environment to synchronize with its rhythm. That is the rule of conviction.
That concept completely shifts the paradigm. The stronger wave forces the weaker wave to match it. So his unshakable, borderline delusional belief eventually forced the entire global financial market to synchronize with his vision.
Exactly.
He didn't bend to the reality of the market. Reality ultimately bent to him.
Because he implicitly understood and operated by what metaphysical philosophers often refer to as the 7 hidden rules of reality.
I want us to break down the mechanics of these rules because they are essentially the cheat codes to the RAS and the game engine of life.
The first rule is the foundational premise. The universe is fundamentally mental, not physical. Everything physical originates as a thought structure.
Okay.
The second rule is that the subconscious mind sets the boundaries of your reality. The conscious mind desires, but the subconscious executes whatever blueprint it holds.
Let me jump in on the third and fourth rules because they fascinated me. The third rule is the collapse of importance. Desperation repels. If you need something too badly, you push it away. We'll dig deeply into the mechanics of that in a moment.
That one is critical.
And the fourth rule is coherence. It means the strongest, most consistent frequency wins. You cannot be a visionary on Monday and a victim on Tuesday.
The fifth rule states that resistance supplies energy to the problem. What you fight, you feed. The sixth rule is that imagination is the actual literal blueprint for the biological torpedo we discussed earlier.
Right.
And the seventh rule, perhaps the most vital for daily application.
The mirror of reality never smiles first.
Precisely. Think of reality as a literal mirror. You cannot walk up to a physical mirror, look at your reflection, see a frown, and aggressively demand that the reflection smile at you.
Because it's just reflecting you.
The reflection is just a delayed echo of your state. You have to be the source of the smile. You have to generate the light and the frequency internally, completely independent of what the mirror is showing you, before the reflection can eventually morph to match you.
When I try to conceptualize this, I liken it to dropping a massive iron anchor in the middle of a violent storm.
That's a great visual.
The waves of public opinion, the crashing stock prices, the physical lack of money, the rejection letters that is the hurricane. But if your anchor, which is your internal self-concept, your B state, is utterly unmoved, the ship has no choice but to stay in place. It will weather the storm until the external weather clears and matches the calm of the depths.
Yes.
This founder shifted entirely away from the ego-driven need to be validated by the magazine covers. He dropped into a state of absolute, quiet certainty, a state of purpose.
And that is the true defining shift. Moving away from the fragile ego's demand that the world immediately validate your worth and stepping into a state of surrendered, powerful purpose where the external validation becomes irrelevant to your internal coordinate.
But let's bring this down to earth. How exactly do you drop that anchor?
Right, the practical application.
Yeah, how does a normal person maintain that profound feeling of success and abundance when their bank account is literally overdrawn, their boss is screaming at them, their car just broke down, and they are bone tired? It is easy to hold a frequency when you have venture capital backing you. It is much harder when you are deciding between paying for gas or groceries.
It is incredibly difficult.
This brings us to the actual mechanics of conscious navigation. How do we play this game of life on a Tuesday afternoon?
To navigate the daily mechanics, we have to understand the specific, invisible traps that constantly drain our energetic and cognitive resources. The first and most pervasive trap is what metaphysical frameworks call excess potential, which arises directly from the concept of importance.
Let me stop you because I need you to explain the mechanics of importance in this context, because obviously paying my rent on time is objectively important. Keeping my job is important. Are you saying I shouldn't care?
You should care, and you must take responsible action. But we are talking about the energetic and emotional weight you attach to the outcome.
Okay, the weight.
When you desperately, obsessively need something to happen, when you fixate on a specific job offer or a specific romantic partner, or hitting a specific financial number by Friday, you elevate its importance to a level of excess potential. You create a massive energetic imbalance in your psychological and environmental field.
Like winding a mechanical spring way too tight. It's vibrating with tension.
Exactly. And nature absolutely abhors an imbalance. The physical universe constantly seeks equilibrium. Atmospheric pressure equalizes to create wind. Hot and cold equalize.
So what happens with our excess potential?
To neutralize that massive artificial spike of needy, desperate energy you've created, the universe deploys balancing forces. And ironically, tragically, these balancing forces usually manifest as obstacles that wreck your plans. Your desperation literally acts as a magnetic repellent to the goal.
This resonates so deeply with common human experience. I see it constantly in dating and career hunting.
Oh, everywhere.
Have you ever noticed that the moment you finally genuinely stop caring about hearing back from a job interview, maybe you found another option, or you just surrendered to the process they call you the very next morning?
It happens universally. Or the moment someone gives up on the obsessive dating apps and just decides to be genuinely happy and fulfilled alone, someone amazing casually walks into their life at a coffee shop.
The desperation acts like an invisible force field pushing the thing away. The second you drop the desperation, the force field drops, and the thing can finally approach you.
Because you successfully collapsed the importance. You removed the excess potential. The second major trap in the daily game of life is a concept that requires careful observation to spot: pendulums.
This concept of pendulums fascinated me in the research because it perfectly describes the modern internet era. Break down the mechanics of a pendulum for us.
Think of a pendulum as a collective energy information structure. Whenever a large group of people begin to think in the exact same direction, focusing their mental and emotional energy on the same topic, they create a pendulum.
Like a group minds.
Yes. Corporate cultures are pendulums. The relentless, outrage-driven political news cycle is a massive pendulum. Societal anxieties about an impending economic recession are pendulums. They are essentially energetic parasites or autonomous algorithms that feed entirely on your emotional reactions.
So when I spend an hour furiously doom-scrolling on social media, getting incredibly angry at a political headline, or when I get dragged into toxic, whispered office gossip by the water cooler, I am actively feeding the pendulum my cognitive energy.
You are giving it your life force. And here is the truly insidious trick of the pendulum. It does not care if you are fighting it or championing it.
Wait, really?
Both require intense emotional arousal. If you passionately hate a political figure or passionately worship that same figure, you are vibrating at the pendulum's exact frequency. It is successfully siphoning your dopamine, your cortisol, and your focus.
Leaving me completely depleted with zero creative energy left to build my own room. I'm spending all my mental currency reacting to someone else's architecture.
Precisely. To successfully navigate the game of life, you must learn to become empty to the pendulum.
Empty?
You do not fight them. Fighting them just feeds them more energy. You acknowledge their existence, you observe them, and you deliberately let them swing right past you without snagging your emotional hooks. You maintain your own frequency, entirely independent of the collective panic or outrage.
Which brings us back to the core mechanism of personal creation. If I am collapsing importance and I am ignoring the pendulums, how do I actually build the room? There is a phrase that came up repeatedly in our historical sources: feeling is the secret.
Yes, this is a foundational concept from mid-20th century metaphysical thought, but it aligns perfectly with the neurobiology of the RAS. You cannot merely intellectually think about your goal.
Right.
You cannot just write a lifeless list of affirmations and read them like a robot. Your subconscious mind, that autonomous heat-seeking missile, does not speak English. It does not understand logical syllogisms. It only speaks the ancient biological language of sensory vividness and deep somatic emotion. You must mentally fully occupy the state of the wish fulfilled.
You have to feel the heavy metal keys of the new car pressing into your palm. You have to smell the leather. You have to feel the profound physical relief in your chest of knowing the mortgage is completely paid off. You have to saturate your nervous system with the sensory data of the end result.
And once the subconscious truly, fundamentally accepts this new sensory reality as the current truth, because remember, it cannot tell the difference between vivid imagination and physical reality, it triggers a phenomenon known as the bridge of incidence.
The bridge of incidence. Okay, I have to stop and really dissect this, because this is where a lot of people check out.
Understandably so.
Let me ask the skeptical question. Am I supposed to just sit on my couch, close my eyes, vividly visualize a briefcase holding $1 million, and then just wait for it to magically crash through my living room ceiling? Because that sounds like the exact mystical delusion that critics rightfully mock.
That is the most common and most damaging misunderstanding of this entire philosophy. No, you absolutely do not sit on the couch and wait for magic.
Good to know.
The bridge of incidence is a sequence of seemingly random, serendipitous events that naturally unfold in the physical world to lead you to your goal. But here is the key part of that bridge. Will absolutely, undeniably compel you to take physical action.
So you still have to act.
You will feel a sudden, undeniable urge to make a specific phone call, or walk into a random bookstore and pick up a specific book, or strike up a conversation with a stranger at a coffee shop who turns out to be the exact investor you need.
But the action feels entirely different.
It is not forced through willpower. It is a natural, effortless unfolding of the identity you have already assumed.
You are being pulled by the vision of the future, rather than pushed by the pain of the past. It feels like inspiration, not obligation. And to keep that connection alive, keep the bridge building itself, we have to talk about the concept of the mental diet.
Yes, the mental diet is crucial.
I see this as the daily maintenance of the be-do-have model. You must ruthlessly guard your internal monologue.
Ruthlessly is the correct word. The mind is a garden, and you must be a brutal gatekeeper of what seeds you allow to take root.
You cannot spend 10 minutes in the morning doing a beautiful visualization of abundance and success and then spend the next 14 hours complaining to your coworkers about how broke you are, how terrible the national economy is, and how fundamentally unfair your boss treats you.
No, you can't.
You cannot complain about the 3D reality of your current struggles while simultaneously trying to build the 4D reality of your future success. If you do that, your RAS just gets confused, throws its hands up, and defaults back to the evolutionary negativity bias.
It is entirely an issue of coherence. The game engine of reality rewards absolute coherence over just about everything else. If your internal thoughts, your spoken words, and your physical actions are perfectly aligned on the same frequency, the manifestation process accelerates exponentially.
And if they aren't?
If you are divided against yourself wanting wealth, but speaking about lack, you stall the engine completely.
Which perfectly transitions us to the stark reality of the physical playing field. Let's look at action, alignment, and the systemic walls that exist all around us. We need to talk about the actual physics of effort.
Because clearly, as we just established, physical action is required in this dimension.
But you mentioned earlier that the action feels different. We need to differentiate between forced action and inspired action.
The distinction between the two is the difference between burnout and effortless momentum. Forced action is any action taken from a place of deep fear, perceived lack, or a sense of societal should. It is driven by the anxiety of the ego.
I should post on social media today, or the algorithm will punish me and my business will fail. I should drag myself to this networking event even though I am clinically exhausted because if I don't, I'll miss an opportunity.
Exactly. When you take forced action, it feels like wading waist-deep through thick molasses. It requires immense depleting reserves of willpower.
It's exhausting.
And because the action inherently carries the vibrational signature of fear, desperation, and excess potential, it almost always yields minimal, frustrating results. It leads directly to the burnout we discussed at the beginning of this conversation.
It's pure friction. You are flooring the gas pedal while the parking brake is fully engaged. So what is the mechanical opposite? What is inspired action?
Inspired action arises naturally and spontaneously once the internal identity is truly aligned. When you are firmly anchored in the be state of your goal, the action feels effortless, deeply curious, and joyful. It is a genuine, organic impulse from within.
Like, I am so incredibly excited about this new idea. I simply have to write it down right now.
Yes. Now, this is important. Inspired action might still require immense, grueling physical exertion. You might voluntarily stay up until 3 in the morning working on a complex project, but it doesn't deplete your life force in the same way. It actually generates energy.
Because the action is perfectly aligned with your true internal frequency. It feels like play, even when it is hard work.
Exactly.
But okay, I need to bring a crucial, very grounded pushback into this conversation right now. We've spent a long time talking about internal frequencies, self-concepts, the RAS, and building the mental room.
Yes.
But let's look at the actual sociological reality of the world. Some people are born on third base. Some people are born in a penthouse suite of a room that was meticulously built and paid for by their great-grandparents.
That's entirely true.
We cannot simply manifest our way out of brutal systemic inequality, right? A child born into deep generational poverty in a marginalized community isn't failing to achieve financial independence because they just didn't visualize hard enough.
I strongly, unequivocally agree with you, and this is exactly where our stack of research demands rigorous sociological context. If we ignore the physical structures of society, we fall into a highly toxic psychological trap known as spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing. I have seen this term used to critique certain self-help movements. Let's define the mechanics of it for everyone listening.
It is the dangerous tendency to use spiritual ideas or metaphysical concepts like manifestation, frequency, and mindset to actively sidestep, invalidate, or suppress genuine psychological wounds, complex human grief, or very real, measurable systemic issues.
So using it as a shield.
Exactly. It is the weaponization of good vibes only as a defense mechanism to avoid confronting pain, trauma, or societal injustice.
It is incredibly toxic. It leads to weaponized gratitude. It is the act of looking at someone who just got laid off due to corporate greed or someone who experienced a profound tragedy and telling them they just need to raise their vibration.
Or worse, implying that they somehow attracted this hardship into their life because of their negative thoughts.
It is horrific philosophical victim blaming.
It is a complete misapplication of the laws. We have to clearly acknowledge the sociological reality. The laws of society, our financial institutions, our legal frameworks, our economic structures function exactly like the laws of physics. They are indifferent algorithmic machines.
But with a catch.
Right. But unlike gravity, these societal machines were built by human beings, and they were specifically programmed over centuries to favor specific types of cultural capital, specific zip codes, and specific demographics.
The structural walls.
Yes.
The privilege gap.
Yes. The meritocracy myth suggests that the playing field is perfectly level, and if you simply work hard and maintain a high-frequency mindset, you will automatically reach the top. But empirical sociological data clearly shows that inherited wealth, structural bias, and physical environment play massive, undeniable roles in life outcomes.
Of course they do.
A societal institution processes people according to its historical programming. If a public school funding system is mathematically tied to local property taxes, the system does not pause to care if a student in an impoverished neighborhood is a brilliant, high-frequency, visionary thinker. The algorithmic system simply neutrally defunds their school.
So the physical game board is heavily biased. How do we reconcile the incredible power of the be-to-have internal model with the crushing reality of these systemic walls? Because if the system is designed to keep certain people out, why should they bother visualizing anything at all?
This is where true, profound mastery of the human experience is forged. The masters of reality do not use these internal concepts to deny the existence of external injustice. They possess the psychological maturity to clearly distinguish between two very different forces.
Okay, what are they?
First, internal resistance, which is their own psychological homeostasis, their own self-sabotage, and their own limited self-concept. Second, external injustice, which are the real, physical, institutional walls built by society.
You have to fight both battles, but you cannot use the same tools for both.
Precisely. You must ruthlessly cultivate your internal frequency, reprogram your biological RAS, and fully assume the identity of success while simultaneously keeping your eyes wide open, acknowledging and navigating the harsh context of the physical world.
You don't ignore the world.
You use your unshakable, carefully curated internal alignment to generate the immense energy, clarity, and resilience required to dismantle the systemic barriers in your path. You do not let the external injustice corrupt your internal frequency.
That makes perfect sense.
That is exactly how marginalized individuals throughout human history have managed to spark massive societal revolutions. They held an internal frequency of absolute freedom, equality, and dignity that was so incredibly powerful, it eventually entrained the entire external society, forcing the laws to change, despite unimaginable violent systemic pushback.
They held the psychological frequency of the Grand Palace while physically locked inside the shed. That is a profound realization. It is about holding the tension between absolute, sovereign internal agency and a grounded, clear-eyed awareness of external reality.
If we pull all of this together and connect it to the bigger picture, the greatest tragedy of the human experience is not failure. The greatest tragedy is living your entire life as a passive observer of an accidental world.
Just going through the motions. Drifting.
Yes. Letting the pendulums push your emotions around, letting the biological negativity bias dictate your daily mood, and letting the rigged societal structures dictate the absolute limits of what you believe you are capable of achieving.
So what's the alternative?
You are not meant to simply react to the mirror of reality. You are meant to stand firmly in front of it, embody a state of purpose, and cast a deliberate, intentional reflection. By mastering the be-to-have sequence, by shifting your core identity first, you finally step out of the waiting room.
Yeah.
By dropping the desperate need and neutralizing the excess potential, you stop repelling your own goals. And by taking action solely from a place of aligned inspiration, you stop fighting the brutal current of reality. You start pushing the boulder. You become the river itself.
You stop fighting the current, and you become the river. I love the mechanics behind that metaphor. We have covered an immense landscape of information today. From the amoral, terrifying neutrality of the universe, to the biological gatekeeper sitting in our brainstems, to the fundamental architecture of identity, the mathematical entrainment of belief, and the necessity of navigating the systemic walls of the physical world.
We really unpacked a lot.
Thank you for joining us on this intensive exploration of our research stack. Just remember, the core mechanical lesson of all of this, the room must be completely meticulously built in the mind before the physical furniture of reality can be successfully arranged.
The internal blueprint precedes the external structure, always, without exception.
And so, I want to leave you with a final concept to mull over as you close this out and go about your day. If the physics of reality are fundamentally shaped by conscious observation, neurobiological filtering, and internal assumption. Let me rephrase that. If the physics of reality are shaped by conscious observation and internal assumption, then every single thought you have today, every casual complaint you make to a friend, every fleeting daydream you entertain, is not just a passive reaction to your current life.
It's active.
It is the active, literal blueprint for tomorrow's architecture. Every thought is a physical brick being laid in your nervous system. So I have to ask you, what kind of room are you building right now?